The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
East Asia.
I lost myself in the map.
You lost yourself in the map? Common age that they have sex is 23.7, so they're almost 24.
23.7?
Yes. But this gets where it's even crazier. It's even crazier. So not only does Brazil have sex the earliest on in life, and Indonesia, Malaysia has sex later, it's actually completely flipped when it comes to being safe when having sex. That blew my mind. I don't know if that blows your guys' mind, but in Brazil, 66% of them use condoms. Yeah, so they have sex and they're more comfortable with having loveless sex, of what we call loveless sex, but they're actually being safe. And then it's flipped in Indonesia and Malaysia, and only 27% of them use protection. So I thought that was fascinating when we were looking at the statistics on people that are engaging in the activity of sex and it not being correlated to love.
So I would ask a question. For people like me, that I'm not knowledgeable in the Asian culture and religion, what does their culture tell about sex?
Okay, well, let's talk about culture. Okay. So culture, I think, has many forms, right? I've been taught assimilation and acclimation and different ways that we view and have values. Culture, it can come to, obviously, the topic at hand is sexual promiscuity. So, do I wait until I get married? Do I have an arranged marriage? Do I get to pick my partner? Do I spend a long amount of time dating somebody before I decide that I'm going to have sex with them? Culturally, is it acceptable? I thought it was interesting when we looked at the Far East waiting to have sex, because when you get to countries like Cambodia or some of those, sexual promiscuity and prostitution and even child trafficking, which is really sad, is prevalent there. So culturally, you've got all of these kind of paradoxical things going on where it's okay for women to, engage in prostitution, or, they have sex at different ages, but culturally how they view sex and the comfortability between a man and a woman, or even a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, is different than another culture, let's say like Italian. So, my father is Italian, and I was raised primarily on that side with that passion and that love and that sex is acceptable, and I've got lots of brothers, and it's, but we're Americanized. So, but Italians in general, their culture views sex somewhat differently. Actually, Italians were on here as being in the middle, about 18 years old. And if you're curious, the United States, most people watching in United States, Canada, and the UK on our talk show and our radio show.
Hi, Richard.
We have sex average at 18 years old. So I thought that was interesting.
And my country? Did you research my country?
Your country was No, your country isn't on there. It didn't participate in the 37 countries polled. But that whole area of South America, like Colombia, Chile, obviously Brazil, was about 16, 17 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So culturally, go back to culturally on how we view sex. So I was talking a little bit because of the statistics about Asia and India, and then I jumped over to Italy, or, now coming back to the United States and looking at sex. This, this was what inspired part of our topic tonight, was looking at some of the things we talked about with my daughter. I mean, I have an 18-year-old, and the way that beautiful 18-year-old, and the way that we culturally within our own family unit, you have micro, meso, and macro when you look at culture. So in our micro unit, I have raised my girls to be acceptable with their body, to love their body, to try and find a partner and share that with somebody special when you love them. That's what I did growing up. My mom is actually in the room. My mom. But she knows, I had the same partner all throughout junior high and high school. And I didn't feel like I was having loveless sex. But going back to my girls, what inspired part of this topic for tonight is girls, and if there's any children watching, please stop, or this is going to very much lack conservatism, but this is real, is that my children's junior high, a girl was caught giving oral sex, a 12-year-old was caught giving oral sex to another boy in the locker room. So this is real. This is in America. This is in a white conservative town of Glendora, in a middle class, upper class neighborhood, where you've got girls in junior high that are performing oral sex. Obviously, this is loveless, in our opinion, of what we would call loveless, and engaging this particular type of activity. So that's culture shock, right? That we live in a society and a culture right now. You and I differ. We could even get into a story. We have plenty of time because our talk show is an hour, but culturally, how I, as a 40-year-old single mother, we've discussed sex and intimacy and love, and how you, as a 23-year-old male from Ecuador.
I would be a virgin in Malaysia at this age.
Oh. But you're not in Malaysia. You're not in Kansas anymore. You're in Hawaii.
I'm next to Brazil.
So let's go back to, I know we kind of jumped all over the place, but, being organized in our thought process and looking at loveless sex and culture. So what is your version now that I kind of went through mine?
Yeah, well, you can see that sometimes statistics are not that accurate. There's a lot of hidden statistics of people that are not willing.
He meant hidden, not heathen, by the way.
Yeah, hidden. Sorry, because of my Ecuadorian accent. So my main language is Spanish, but yeah, she will clarify my language if I have something wrong.
I'm his translator. So,
there are also hidden statistics, and you can hear a lot of that hidden statistics when you are, as a psychologist, in your consultory. So, for example, my country that is known, I'm from Ecuador, is between Colombia and Peru. We're like in the middle. Is really known because we're a really Catholic culture. Like more than 80% of the people are considered Catholic. But even then, when I was taking patients, there was a lot of people having sex from 14 years old.
Well, the statistics I gave were just the median.
Yeah.
So obviously you have something called outliers. And those are even people reporting, because I mean, if I took the statistics from my own children here in the United States, or my own patients and students, I would say the average age was less than 17.
Yeah, for sure. And
we have somebody that wants to come on. Should we invite them on? They went away.
Yeah, they went away.
If anybody wants to come on and join our conversation, we're having kind of an open forum tonight.
Is the production told you something?
I don't know if we're having radio problems. I'm just continuing on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't know if maybe in your experience, in my own experience too, the statistics say something, and then Lisa?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Lisa wants to come on. Let's see. Keep talking while I have trouble.
So when you have conversations with your friends, with your real close friends, you can see that most of them have sex at lower ages. And you have to consider that, and technology is changing all the game of loveless sex.
Totally.
I had a case of a 6-year-old little girl that was looking porn every day. Her mom found her storyline of how much days she watched porn, and she had a compulsion masturbation disorders.
We have somebody that added in, Lisa Bledsoe, but we've got, it just looks black. Just keep talking.
So, for example, that cases makes you think that what is happening now with sex, if it loves sex, a good practice or not, is pornography changing the game of sex or not? So our culture right now is really influenced by internet and social media. So what do you think about that?
No. Okay, sorry.
So what's your opinion on about internet and
Oh gosh. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to, so is loveless sex a new phenomena? Part of our topic. No, loveless sex is not a new phenomena. We have seen it historically for centuries, I think since the inception of humans. And then you've got, we could talk biologicals. We had the frontal lobe develop, and then we have spirituality, and then we had, indoctrination and religion come in and say that we, should have sex only with people we love, or people that we're in intimate relationships with. And now we're in a generation leading up to technology in the last 50 years where divorce has become acceptable. The women's movement in the United States has sent us into a whole new era, a whole new culture, and that divorce is okay. And then now we've got, proliferation of divorced single parents or divorcees. And then you've got technology, right? So now here we are in the technology age, which gives us an opportunity to be exposed and interconnect with individuals across the world, and then in our local cities. And we've had prior talk shows and our radio show looking at online dating. So where do you want to start? I mean, we could start with the little girl that you talked about. I've had patients and students that are very young, six, but young teenagers that have had an obsession with pornography. I've had patients and students throughout my career that are obviously obsessed with technology. The obsession with technology, and I like to call it Kardashian syndrome. You like that? It's Kardashian syndrome. Lisa Bledsoe wants to come back on. I don't know what happened last time. I can't add her. So, Kardashian syndrome is like our boobs have to be perfect and our waists have to be skinny, and we get butt implants, and we accept sex as something acceptable, and women that we want to look like. My friend Matt on here is saying that thanks to hyperconnectivity, the game has changed totally. But we have to break down, especially for us in our profession, and break down, how did this happen? So where does it come from that technology now interfaces with our sexual desires? So I think sex has always been innate in us. We have always wanted, obviously biologically, neurochemically, to have sex, and then it feels good. So it's our bodies are reinforced, right? But then where do you add in the spirit and the emotional connection and the concepts of love? So you've got that, and then you've now got technology where little girls, I can speak as a woman, you can speak as a man, where girls are being shown these Kardashians and, Miley Cyrus and whoever you want to look at as their icons and their sex symbols. They exemplify sex. They exemplify superficiality, and they really sadly don't represent the norm of women, in terms of body physique and the reality of obviously even socioeconomic. But technology is putting little girls' minds the sexual nature. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Thanks, Joe. If anybody wants to dial in, there's the 800 number. It's 800-508-5431. Again, I'm your Armed Radio host, Professor Jamie Lynn, and our toll-free number is 800-508-5431. So, on topic, technology, right? So, I don't know. I mean, we could go forever. It's a problem with us as psychologists and therapists. Our minds just... Sorry, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I think that technology changed the game of how we use sex, how we see sex. And I remember, like, I'm a man, I don't talk to you as a man perspective. Here is not talking the clinical psychologist. Here's talking
as a man.
Alfonso as a man. Mm-hmm. I remember when I had 12 years old, in my country, in the classroom, when you have the breaks and switch from hour to hour, my friends were watching porn in their cell phones, and this was 2007.
Okay, so let's break this down for our viewers and our listeners. So you're 23 years old. You're in high school.
Yeah.
And your friends on break are watching porn.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to stop real quick. Okay. So I'm 40 years old. When I was in high school, it was the 90s. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have pagers yet. They were just kind of emerging out. But realistically, the boys on break were still visually looking at the girls talking about who they could have sex with. And they did have porn. I know we would go to parties and they would have, you had VCR tapes and DVDs were just coming out and emerging. And and pornography was still happening. But I just wanted to break that down, looking at the generational shift between my age and your age. So carry on. Your guy friends are looking at porn on break.
Yeah, and I can say 100% of my friends talk to me about looking at least once pornography. So it's a common practice, and I think any other man can agree with this. Like, I haven't met a guy that has told me I've never watched porn in my life, and he says that later on. He says that he admits watching porn. And as a man, what you want, or one of the main competition, is with how much girls you can have sex.
So it's like a game. And we know that. Yeah. As women, we know that. We know that men are looking at us as trophies or as some like a competitive sporting event. And then it puts in our mind that we want to be the trophy. We want to be the prettiest, or the one that gets the hot guy, or the female. I mean, it broke my heart. You saw me earlier today, like hearing about a girl giving a blowjob and in the locker room in junior high. That stuff didn't happen when I was in junior high. We didn't hear about that stuff. I mean, I was still part of I was nervous the first time I was going to kiss a boy in 7th grade. Like, I can't, it's heartbreaking and shocking to me, the paradigm shift that we've had in so many different arenas with our youth. And when it comes to girls' self-esteem and thinking about how we love ourselves, when you're sexually when you're intimate and having sex with somebody, we're supposed to have, I think, a connection, and yet we have gotten to a point in society where we have sex and there's no love, is it self-love? So, I mean, we could start and talk about these a little bit.
Lisa has a good point.
What did Lisa say?
Internet has a huge impact in increase because access is so easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe I have talked with different people, like older people with more age, and they say that when they wanted to look a naked woman or pornography, they used to send someone to buy Playboy or a different magazine or buy these videotapes. But now we don't have that problem. You just need internet, any mobile electronic device,
yep,
and you can access porn.
Yeah. It's actually shut down the business in some regards, right? I mean, there's that documentary I watched about retired porn stars and how it's destroyed the industry, and I won't go off on a tangent, but when I was a little girl, I remember finding my dad and my brother's Playboys. Playboys was huge, and you're right, that getting access to pornography 20 years ago wasn't like what it is now.
Yeah, and you see that even Playboy right now changed his whole... They don't show nude. Yeah, they don't shoot nudes now. Nudes is the right word?
Yeah, nudes.
Nude woman. Now they show it like in a sexy pose, different topics, but covered. Because they say that pornography has made so much impact in the internet that obviously people won't buy a magazine to see naked woman if they can see a video of a naked woman for free in internet with this access. So one of the things that I've seen is that boys and girls, since even before 10 years old, are really sexualized now. I remember, I was in a family party in my country in South America, and we're considered really conservatives. And I remember the parents were having like their barbecue, eating outside, and they were inside playing in one of the rooms of the house. So I entered one of the rooms just to see what they were doing, and one of them was doing like the sexual movement with a chair, and they were having fun doing that, and they were like 7 years old, and I was like, at that age I was like playing with G.I. Joes or different things. I was playing outside, and I didn't see any insinuation of that with my friends when I was that age.
Yeah.
So actually internet is really changing the game.
The internet has absolutely changed the game on what it's doing to our love lives, on what it's doing to our marriages, and what it's doing to our little developing youth, what it's doing to, I think, our own concepts of love. So these 7 types of love, this is an article from a medical doctor, Burton, right? And it's from Psychology Today, and it talks about the 7 types of love, and I think that this is going to change. I think that the internet is making us conceptualize sex and what sex means to us, and how sex is acceptable even for our teenage youth as well as for men your age. You know, you're a millennial, and what that looks like. I mean, the average millennial man in the United States, I believe, has already had 15 to 20 partners by the time they're 25, and that's conservative. You know, Sage, how about our movie stars and our presidents that are now being accused of inappropriate behavior? Yeah. So do you want to speak to that? The loveless sex, and is this a new phenomena? I mean, you can go back to Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, that's a controversial topic. I think that the main idea is that this is not new. Right now, the only thing is that exposure is massive because you have different channels of communication. You have social media, you have the internet, you have newspaper, you have a lot of channels in television, you have Netflix and different topics. So you can expose things that were hidden before. You can expose them in public quicker than any other generation. So my opinion is actually we're just looking at something that has been always been there and we were trying to hide. But yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion?
No, I totally agree that it's always been there. So I'm going to talk about the 7 types of love, and I guess our viewers and our listeners can let us know too if they think that they've always been there. So the first type of love is eros, which we know goes back to, and most of these go back to classical readings and Greek mythology or Latin, where the derivatives started. But the eros love, obviously we know of, is the type of love that has to do with passion or sex, so the topic at hand, and the modern construct of what we know as romantic love. But this particular love, eros love, could be talked about for hours.
Yeah.
So looking at sexual or passionate love, what does that mean to me? Passionate love versus sexual love, intimate love, when we're in a society or a time where I can have multiple partners and experience passion and sex with a variety of partners, and how does that equate to love? I think like a behavior analyst a lot, or, you know, I'm big in the neuroscience arena. Most people know me as an expert for children, and we've talked about this before, as I've specialized in adults and trauma and sexual disorders for years as well in my private practice. But when we look at this type of sex, eros, it really comes down to ourselves and how we love ourselves and what we're seeking for in an interpersonal relationship when we're trying to choose a partner. So the definition in and of itself of this type of love has changed so vastly that we could talk about that for an hour. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. This comes from even from the Greek society. You can see different writings by Socrates, Aristotle,
Plato.
Plato, that's the name in English? Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they have even homosexual love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
That most of our great philosophers, even Alexander the Great and our big war icons, they made love to men. It was actually considered a gift from God pre-Jesus Christ era, and this whole phenomenon of condemning homosexual relationships was that to go out and be able to fight a war and save your civilization or become, protect your kin and your family and your homestead, but to be able to go out and then make love to a man as well as a woman was considered a gift from God. And then that all changed after the Bible came about. If you look at Eastern cultures, you look at the Sanskrits or the Dead Sea Scrolls, they speak a lot about the different types of love and the acceptance of homosexuality. And then even more interesting is these people were young. I mean, culturally, we were it was 150, 200 years ago. You were married and pregnant by the time you were 13, 14 years old. I mean, As soon as you started to menstruate, you were married off, or a king was allowed to have multiple wives. Commoners were impregnated at very young ages. I mean, so this whole concept of teenage versus adulthood, when we look at passionate love, I mean, these were what we considered, what we're talking about now, going back to the, you know, the 12-year-old having oral sex with another boy in the locker room. That 12-year-old just 200 years ago, this would have kind of been, she would have been pregnant and married.
Yeah, that's true. For me, everything is cultural, and it shifts out through the years. In when Jesus was for all the people that are Christians, he was presented in the temple because that was the shift from being a boy to being a man at 12 years old. So at 12 years old, he was already considered a man. Right now, psychologists are discussing about if you finish your teenage years at 18. Now they are talking about 21 or 23 or 25.
26.
26.
Yeah. Neuroscience is looking at when does the brain actually really mature and its growth. So interesting comment, and thank you so much for that, Rhonda. Our girls seem to believe that having sex with many partners and wearing very little clothing is being a feminist, even when their moms do not teach this. I think that goes case in point back to what media, social media, the movies, even Disney, when you look at, you know, the big commercial media companies, Warner Brothers. I just saw Black Panthers, which was amazing, by the way. I mean, the way that they dress, the tight clothes, the accentuation of the breast area. So girls, I think, saying, absolutely, I can dress like this. This is within my right as a woman. It's a catch-22. We want to be able to embrace our femininity, but why does that then equate to being a feminist, as opposed to, I see women that wear what do they call the jabi, what are they called? Damn it.
I have no idea.
Anyway, conservative Muslim women covering up, and I think that that's beautiful too, is being able to cover up your body and say, I'm a strong woman, and that this is maybe feminism, as opposed to a woman, like Rhonda said, or a little girl that's dressing sexually promiscuous and saying, I'm a feminist, it's okay, I'm a woman, it's okay if I dress like this. But then when you look at other constructs, like we could talk about, we're in Hawaii, coming back full circle to our new listeners. We are on the Big Island, and I took Alfonso yesterday to experience his first nude beach. So, interesting fact about me.
Optional nude beach.
Optional nude beach, yes. But I am completely comfortable with my body, and I have been taught by my mom and my aunt and the great women in our family who are strong that our bodies are beautiful, whether we're 300 pounds or 100 pounds, or, you know, 4 children and stretch marked or smoking hot. It doesn't matter, that this is the way we came into the world. And going to a nude beach yesterday for somebody like yourself, who's ultra conservative Catholic from a different country, and seeing from ages, there were little children from ages 3 to women in their 80s, right? Or men in their 80s. I mean,
I was traumatized. No, I just kidding.
But it was quite the cultural experience, and how the mind processes.
I have to do therapy after this.
If anybody wants to watch EMDR, I could model some EMDR for you on him being traumatized with watching me run around naked in a bunch. It was really traumatizing.
Yeah. It was interesting to see nude people in a black sand beach for the first time. I saw 2 things for the first time. I tried to focus more on the black sand beach. But I wore my shorts.
He did wear his shorts.
Yeah.
But I wish I could have snapped a picture, right? Because I'm obviously comfortable with my body, and I grew up coming to the island, and this is something that's culturally and respectably within our religion or our spirituality or whatever you want to call it. And so I'm free as a bird, and there's another gentleman, our friend Bill from Alaska, and then our other friends from Europe, and everybody's naked except for Alfonso. And there's something freeing about it. There's something in the mind that, and I don't know what it was like for you, if at some point your mind would trigger like, oh my God, I'm standing around a bunch of naked people drink, and I don't drink alcohol or use drugs, but you guys are drinking and people are smoking marijuana, and it's like this total cultural environment that's kind of mind shocking, right?
Yeah. Really different.
We got off on a tangent, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's really different, but it's okay always to experience different culture, different mindsets, because we think that where we live and what we have around ourselves is the only thing. How we were raised, the teachings that our parents gave to us, or what the priest or the how do you say pastor? The pastor taught us when we were little are the only things available in this world. But when you travel, you have the opportunity to see that there's different mindsets, there's different ideas that could be that could improve your view of the world, and you start to even if you don't agree, you can accept and respect if it's healthy. For example,
that's the problem. You have to define healthy. I mean, going back to loveless sex, and is this a new phenomena? If you took, I mean, as statistics, we're taught in doctoral school how to run statistics. So I always like to give the simple example is if you line up 10 people and you take data, how many people are going to say that this is healthy out of those 10 people? How many of 10 mothers, if you line them up, would say their 12-year-old having oral copulation in a locker room is acceptable, that's healthy?
Yeah, well,
I would say 0. What would you say?
Yeah, 0.
Yeah, 0, but that's happening. I mean, we are living in a society with loveless sex, and this is a phenomena that's going on.
Yeah, well, it's a very difficult moment to conceptualize things because things always change right now, and ideas, paradigms with the internet, and especially with sex. So what I can tell you about loveless sex is, for me, it depends what is important for you. What's your inner struggle? Because for me, as a person from a really conservative culture, I got really shocked when I see nude people walking around.
Are we going back to the nude beach?
Yeah. I'm going back to the culture. Looking what are your values, what are you comfortable about? Because if you were raised in a culture where sex is natural, you don't have an inner struggle. Like loveless sex, like having several partners. But for different cultures, there's an inner struggle with that.
But again, if you line up 10 people, I mean, I've done this with my daughter, who's a teenager, and my younger one, who's a preteen, and we've talked openly about this. Mm-hmm. Girls their age would say that sex without being in love is acceptable. That loveless sex is something that is just generally accepted now. Now, we can interpersonally prioritize our own wants and needs, or what I have culturally or morally or ethically taught my children, and what they need to do or want to do ultimately with their bodies. But the vast majority, if you went and polled a high school in America, or depending on geographic, but I would just say, if you took our town, 15, 16-year-old boys and girls would say sex is normal, that's okay, and that you don't have to be in love. You don't have to have love. There's is okay. Being in thinking somebody's hot, or that why did you do that, dude? that would be acceptable. Threw me off, man.
Your mom just wrote a question.
How about whether or not a person's consciousness is uplifting and supportive versus self-service and undermining to others? Isn't this a huge part of deciding whether to have sex or not? Okay, we can talk about that.
What's your opinion?
I think that goes hand in hand with what I'm talking about, is if you're at a high school and you're looking at a person's consciousness being uplifting and supportive. So whose consciousness are we talking about? Because some would argue that if they're 100% secure within themselves and loving themselves and conscious of this, that it's so complicated in the human mind to say that, let's say, having sex with multiple partners, as long as I love myself and I'm comfortable within myself and I don't have judgment about that, and that I'm just sharing in an energetic body experience, is acceptable because that's the ethics and the morals that have developed within that human. How do you differentiate that with somebody that, say, is completely secure within themselves, has higher consciousness, and then says, I choose to look for my twin flame. For those of you that don't know, twin flame is seekers of their twin partner, their soulmate within the planet. And then other people believe soulmates, that you can have a few of them, right? So you take a person who's got higher consciousness, if you will, or is awake, or is in the spiritual realm or religious realm, or whatever you want to call it, and then you have to assign an ethic and a moral to that decision-making process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Touché.
What do you think?
What do I think? Well, it's a very difficult topic. It's a very difficult topic, and I can tell you something. These last 2 years, I've been trying to research a lot about the topic of romantic love. I've been more interested in the romantic love aspect, like long-term relationship, rather than sex. Mm-hmm. And I have studied basically two people, Helen Fisher and what's the other one? Esther Perel. And they are really scientists in when you talk about love, sex, and affairs. And you can see that affairs, having sexual relationship, even out of a romantic long-term relationship, is really common. She asked us a question. We were like 1,000 people in one room, and she said, lift up your hand, everyone that has been involved in an affair, in a short-term sexual relationship, or have been a product, the victim, or the one who did it. Everybody raised their hand. And then Helen Fisher used the same thing in one of his speeches. Who has been part of this? Everyone lifted up their hand. So we're talking about a common topic here.
Yeah.
And loveless sex.
Can I read through the different types of love?
Yeah,
just
sure.
Quickly, so our viewers and our listeners know. So the eros is the sexual or passionate love. The philia is the shared goodwill, and that's where, Aristotle believed that a person can bear goodwill to another one for three reasons: that it's useful, that he's pleasant, and all above, that he's good and rational and virtuous. So that's kind of like friendship love. I think everybody would say that they have that type of love. And then you have the storge, or familial love. So that's the love that occurs between parents. The fourth type of love is the agape love, which is the universal love, such as love for strangers and nature.
Yeah, that's more called the spiritual love.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that, the spiritual love, because I think that'll piggyback on what I was talking about. I feel like we're lopsided. Sorry. That'll piggyback with the question on consciousness and intention, and is it okay to sleep with multiple partners versus do I have to save myself and be in love and with a long-term partner, so you have ludus, which is playful or uncommitted love. So this involves activities like teasing and dancing or more flirting. I think that ties into our social media stuff, right? Like it's become this like playful, flirtatious, the selfies,
the gays,
the booty dancing.
When you blink the eye,
I don't know about I don't know where the locker room's gonna fit in here, and then you have the pragma is a kind of practical love founded on reason or duty of one's longer term interests. So like the shared personal qualities and capabilities and making it work. I think this is the one that you find with marriages or a hybrid of some of the other ones, the eros and the ludus and things like that. And then the, am I saying this right? Philatia.
Yeah, Philatia.
It's like Philatia. Is self-love. So obviously looking at self-love can either be healthy or unhealthy. Healthy self-love in terms of being emotional, our own self-worth, and then thinking, feeling, and acting and reflecting and determining, how we engage within the world. And then obviously you can have self-love that takes on a tone of narcissism, self-centeredness. And that's, I think, where part of people would talk about men or some, lesser in between, but men, just having sex with women and counting the numbers, making it a game, and objectifying a woman. So those are the 7 types of love. But I think that helps I mean, it would be better if we had a visual board, but it helps at least conceptualize that we have different types of love when it comes to examining, having sex lovelessly.
Yeah, for sure. Now I will talk to you from the Christian perspective. So the thing is that Christianity or Catholic Church, as the one I follow, you have 3 reasons of why it's good to have sex. First, it has to be inside marriage. So sexual relationship before marriage are wrong. Mm-hmm. It's considered a sin. The second one is that it's only the first reason is reproduction.
We're all I'm gonna be playful with this though, yeah. But okay. Yeah. Thanks for the Christian Catholic perspective, because we're all sinners and nobody really listens to that one.
Yeah, and reproduction, even though I'm giving us like informational facts.
Thanks.
So even if you marry inside the Catholic Church and your partner for some genetical, biological reason is not able to have kids, you can divorce legally.
Well, I thought I read in the Bible that you're allowed to divorce for affairs. That was like the only reason.
Yeah, but inside the Catholic Church, no. Like, even if you have an affair...
I don't want to be rude, but I just want you to notice that our viewers dropped tremendously when you started talking about religion.
Yeah, I was just giving the information perspective.
I know. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, so...
I'm just pointing out the data. What is wrong with you viewers dropping off when we start talking about religion and spirituality?
And it's quite interesting.
It totally is.
Because we're considered like the Western civilization, the more like influential in Christianity and Catholicism and or Protestantism, but it's like more a Christian perspective. But now we get annoyed when we're talking about...
our viewers were off the charts when we were talking about the 12-year-old giving a blowjob in the locker room.
Yeah.
Those were higher amounts of viewers. Oh, look, it's going up. Maybe we could just sit here.
Sex and
Facebook algorithms in our radio show. A 12-year-old gives a blowjob in a locker room. Yeah. A 12-year-old likes to give oral copulation in a locker room. Hey, do you guys know what's happening in locker rooms? Teenagers are engaging in really hot sex.
Look, he went up.
Okay, I'm sorry. I appreciate listening to you. Mm-hmm. I always love our talks on spirituality and religion and how it correlates to culture and society and love and sex and friendship. Mm-hmm. So we have 10 minutes left. We're at our 10-minute marker.
So my general opinion about loveless sex, it's not healthy or unhealthy. It's if you have your self-esteem high, if you're secure and you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, there's no problem with it. The problem is when you do it because you are looking for attention, you're looking for love or for other type of connection, because then sex is a way of finding yourself, when your real way to find yourself is going inside you. You don't need anyone else to find yourself. You need you. You need to find your value, what's matter to you. And in my experience, the people that have a lot of sex sometimes are not the most fulfilled or the happiest. And this might sound some quite judgmental, but how do you say, sexual workers?
Sex workers, like prostitution?
Yeah.
Escorts? Strippers?
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of them, and they aren't the happiest people ever. And they have lots of sex and loveless sex. So I think that sex, this is my opinion, it's not the answer. You can have fun, but it's just pleasure. And pleasure by science has 2 characteristics. Temporality, it just lasts until you finish it, and habituation, that means that the first time you have it, the pleasure is really high. The second time you do it, pleasure starts going lower, lower, and lower, and lower. And that's why addictions start and dependency starts, because you want to repeat the same amount of pleasure at the same intensity. So, going back again, it depends on how what you use sex for. Are you secure? Are you right with yourself? Do you need sex to be fulfilled or happy?
So it's about the intention.
Yeah, for me, it's about the intention. For example, I know that I don't need to have a lot of sexual partners, and I'm happy with that. I don't need it. If other people need it, it's okay for me. Is their own way of being happy. But I think there's other things rather than love like sex to be more fulfilled. I think that spiritual, like emotional connection with other human, even if it's not sexual, is more fulfilling than sex.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I read some of the articles and I had taken some notes and looking at that when you have loveless sex, it's about sensations. It's about your body. So we had an amazing spiritual mastermind here last night where my mom taught, and we talked a lot about the ego and spirituality and the difference between emotions and feeling. And so for those of you that don't know, the truth is that emotions and feelings are different. And so emotions are looking at our body sensations, and generally they stem, according to some of the spiritual teachings, from states of mind, and I hope I'm quoting this correctly, is fear. So our limbic systems, we're either in a state of fear or we're in a state of conditional love, is looking at how do I get a positive charge in my emotion and my bodies and my sensations that's either driven by fear or driven by conditional love. And then you have feelings, which are in our mind, in the psychology behind looking at I think that I need a man to love myself, or I feel happy when I get all the attention at the high school or the junior high from the boys saying I look hot, or somebody we know likes to have different women over every single night and he gets his reinforcement. This isn't you, obviously this is anonymous, but we do know somebody that likes to have different women over every night of the week and has sexual relationships with them because
a lot
of loud spanking.
Yeah. We count 3 in one day.
Annoying. So anyway, the point being is that the feeling, something in the head psychologically is saying, I need to feel this way, or I need to I think this about myself, and I have to engage in sex, or just like you had mentioned, which was phenomenal, is gambling, drugs, alcohol, shopping, internet, pornography, even sometimes workaholics, but we all engage in this repetitive type of activity. And, going back to talking about it being sex, is what is the ego state or the mind saying that it needs to feel love, to feel at peace, so we're not in a fear state, or we're not searching for something that our bodies need to feel calm. And then I can go on forever on tangents about that, but in summary, when we're looking at loveless sex, I think that sex should always correlate to love in some regards. So even if you're secure in yourself and you're at peace and your emotions and your feelings are congruent with a loving state, and you want to share in that maybe body sensation with the other person, whether it's short term or long term, then I don't believe in judging people.
Yeah,
especially myself.
Yeah, the problem is when you see the other person as a commodity, like the source of your pleasure, and you start focusing only on yourself in the sexual relationship rather than...
So insightful.
So for me it's a mix of eros with agape. You need the passionate and erotic because it's fun.
You're so smart.
We like it. But agape is this spiritual, emotional connection. And science and neuroscience. I was in the biggest psychological congress in December with the top scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists of the world. And they were all talking about emotion. Like, we forgot too much time about talking this emotional connection. And it's really what makes us happier. So if we just focus on the chemistry, on the instantly gratification and pleasure, we're not gonna feel happier in the long term. We need the connection. We need the bonding. We need someone that can hold us tight, not just for a moment, but for we can count on that person.
Yeah. So Lisa Bledsoe, and thank you so much for staying on here, and we'll try to get you on next time. I don't know what happened, but she's absolutely right, is that boys too, you know, we're talking about girls that are engaging in sexual activity for attention, but boys as well, you know, attention either from their own narcissism or attention from their buddies. And just again, a quick behavioral perspective on why we do things is we either do things according to our, you know, medical research is to gain access to something. So either some, like he said, a commodity, we're engaging in a behavior to get access to something, either money, car, sex, job, you know, clothes, whatever it is that we're trying to get access to something, or we're trying to get attention. We're feeling our ego, we're feeling our spirit by looking at what can I do to gain attention? Look at me. You know, I need to feel, I need the sensation of I'm getting attention. So, I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole, right? Of like dad issues, parenting issues, the public school system issues, the medical system. I mean, we can fall down that rabbit hole. But the other third function of behavior is escape and avoidance of punishment. And we could talk about how there's this conception now, spiritually and psychologically, is that we're trying to avoid some form of punishment, bullying, negative judgment from our peers, from our parents, from society saying we're not good enough. So we're engaging in behaviors, and it can default back to why we're engaging in chronic, you know, or perpetual loveless sex. And this being not a new phenomena is trying to escape or avoid. So just to kind of recap on that, we're either functioning in our behavior to gain access to something tangible, we're either trying to get attention, or we're trying to escape fear. And then the fourth powerful one is to get sensory input. And so when we look at sex, there's a ton of sensory things that go into having sex. I mean, the neurotransmitters, the proprioceptive, the vestibular nervous system, we're being flooded with high amounts of serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine and oxytocin, all this like chemical overwhelmingness of how it feels good when we're engaging in that activity. So I know I just kind of gave you the clinical rundown, but I hope that helps people conceptualize perhaps why we're having this new phenomena, or not so new phenomena, just being talked about now that we have media and so much easy access to communication globally around the world, is looking at why are we now having this type of loveless sex.
Very good.
Very good, my friend.
Very good. So I think
Stockholm syndrome.
Sex is...
I gotta say, wake up. I gotta say thank you to my radio show listeners. You guys are amazing. Armed Radio, thank you for having Professor Jamie Lynn and my amazing colleague, Professor Al. We're wrapping up the radio show. Those of you guys tuning in, we've got a radio show that goes at the same time that we run our Facebook Live talk show. So thank you to all of our followers and listeners, friends and family on our Facebook Live. But yeah, so we wrapped up the radio show, but we can finish here if you'd like.
Yeah, well, sex is good, but with love is greater.
Yeah, but it's harder to find. Next week we should...
Okay, wrap it up.
All right, I wrapped it up, my friend. I got the producer in my ear. I thought I wrapped it up.
It's on fire, filled with catastrophe, but she knows she can fly.